30,000 feet in the air. 12 hours of sitting, watching a movie, not being able to shower, and a creep. Grab a blanket, turn off your lights, and let's land safely. With 3 stories from economy. Creep on a plane. 3 years ago, I was taking a red-eye direct flight from California to Pennsylvania. It was roughly 5.5 hours long, from around 11:30 p.m. to 6 a.m. I was looking forward to taking an herbal sleeping aid and just zonking out for the whole trip. This did not happen. I had nabbed a coveted aisle seat, even better, bathroom breaks whenever I want, but then this kind of scruffy-looking, slender, middle-aged man wound up being my seat partner. I'll call him Levy. Levy had the middle seat. A totally passed-out dude had the window and never woke up throughout the trip. Levy introduced himself and plopped down next to me. He was a talker, a loud talker. Even after we were airborne and the lights were out for the night, he kept yammering on, loud enough to disrupt other sleeping passengers. This was all about his previous executive background at SF Base Clothing Company, about the apocalypse. It was the day before May 21st, 2011, one of the alleged Mayan apocalypse dates, etc. I was barely answering him, but I couldn't help being polite. I decided I'd excuse myself and get away from him for a little while, so I went to the bathroom. When I came back, Levy was in my seat. He said something about how he was probably going to have to go to the bathroom soon, but not yet, so he might as well take the aisle and not disturb me. Well, fine, I let him have it and continued to listen to his babble. But I got more and more uncomfortable, and I could tell his talking to me was disrupting other people, so I pretended like I was falling asleep. After a minute or so, I rested my head on my shoulder away from him and just kept my eyes closed. If only I could actually sleep. I tried to will myself to actually fall asleep, but I was just too agitated. I must have stayed in this position for a good 45 minutes. I cracked an eyelid open around then to see if he'd fallen asleep too. But I noticed him looking at porn. Looked like homemade porn on his iPhone. His hand was down his pants like Al Bundy. I quickly shut my eye and really pretended to be sleeping. A little while later, I can sense something in front of me. I open my eyes a tiny crack again and see his hand reaching across me, turn the lock on my seat tray, and let it crash into my lap. At this point, I'm like, what the fuck? And I realize now that I should have gone to the flight attendant to tell her I was really bothered by this dude, but I was too petrified to move at the time. I spent the remaining hours with my eyes sealed shut, the opposite of sleeping, and hoping the dude wouldn't think of any other way to freak me out. Stuck on a plane. I'm a girl. My friends and I were in high school at the time, junior or senior year, I can't remember. We had a break coming up, and most of the kids at school were spending it at a place called Mancora, roughly a 2-hour flight. It's a small town known for its beaches and bars, and since the drinking age was 18, that was pretty important, and we really wanted to go. A friend of mine put together a plan for our group, which involved renting a little beach house for a few days. On the day of the flight, we met up at the airport. We bought our tickets separately, and as such ended up with different seats, but we figured it wouldn't be a big deal. We were sitting at the gate when we started to spot more and more teachers miling around. We soon realized many of our teachers would be on the same flight, with similar plans of vacation in Mancora for the break. We joked amongst each other about how awkward it would be if we had to sit next to one of them on the plane. Then, it was time to line up and board. While we were in line, we witnessed a confrontation between one of the passengers and one of the staff members. The 40-something-year-old guy was carrying a giant box with a flat-screen TV in it. She kept telling him he couldn't carry it on board because it wouldn't fit in the overhead compartment and that he needed to check it in. He was extremely rude and kept shouting back at her. We all rolled our eyes, feeling bad for the lady that had to deal with him. We filed into the plane. I'm seated closer to the entrance, so I settle into my seat, my window seat, and wave at my friends as they move past me at the back of the plane. As more and more people file in, the seat next to me remains empty. I start to think maybe I'll have the row to myself. And then I see him. TV box guy, still carrying the damn thing. I think to myself, please keep walking, please don't sit next to me. But of course, he stops at my row. After a bit of hard work, he fits the box into the overhead compartment and turns around to face the rest of the passengers with the smuggest grin on his face. "See?" he says loudly. "It fits, doesn't it?" He leans over the passenger across the aisle from me. "You see how it fits?" he tells the guy. "They don't know what they're talking about." He finally sits down next to me, and I try not to grimace. Making one more remark about the box, he introduces himself. I figured I'm stuck with him for the next 2 hours, so I might as well try to be civil. I plaster a smile on my face, then turn to the window. But the conversation is far from over. Even though I've always been told I look like I'm 10 years old and I'm very short, he kept asking what job I had, and when I said I was still in school, he wanted to know what university I went to. I finally disclosed that I was still in high school. He then launched into this monologue about his sad and tragic life. Divorced, with a daughter my age, I thought, oh well, it could be worse. And then, things started to get weird. He kept asking me about what I'm interested in. Things like, do you like swimming? Do you like horses? Do you like singing? Only every time I said yes, his response was, really? Me too. And when I said no, he says, yeah, me neither. As if trying to impress me with the fact that we are so alike. Eventually, I start to feel uncomfortable, so I just answer no to all his questions. To make matters worse, he has a problem with the way I refer to him. See, in Spanish, we use the formal word usted to refer to a stranger. It's polite and appropriate, but he kept insisting that we were friends. He even wagged his finger at me, saying he'd have to punish me if I called him usted again. After the question game, he started questioning for more information. Where did I live? Why I was going to Mancora, and then he started to tell me about how he had a company there, and that he would love to help me if I ever needed a contact there. He opened his briefcase to start giving me gifts, and by gifts I mean post-it notes and pens with the name of his company. He kept trying to get my phone number or at least my email address. He asked if he could come and see me at my house for Christmas. It was shocking. It was so weird how quickly the situation was escalating. He told me how he was a poet and pretty much demanded I write something down for him. Still trying to be polite, I said okay. He dictated a cheesy, stupid poem about being in love under palm trees and then told me to keep it. Then he took out his camera and started to film me without my consent. I was beyond uncomfortable. I was scared. I was scared of him following me, finding me, hurting me. I got my phone out and started playing a few games and listening to music. For a while, he kept trying to pry and leaned over way too close to look at what I was doing. But eventually, he settled back and left me alone. When we finally touched down, I wanted to get as far away from him as possible. Unfortunately, I had a heavy bag in the overhead compartment. He offered to get it for me. I knew I couldn't get it on my own, so against my better judgment, I said yes. But once he'd gotten my bag down, he wouldn't let it go. He said not to worry, that he would carry it for me. My heart was pounding as we got off the plane. Instead of exiting into the airport, we had to exit down some stairs and onto the tarmac. Eventually, I was able to grab my bag away from him. Saying goodbye, I practically ran away from him, over to where the baggage claim was. There I met with my friends and told them what happened. They were horrified and kept a lookout for me. The entire trip, I kept looking over my shoulder, wondering if he would pop up. And at the airport the day we were flying back, I kept glancing around, but we never saw him again. PERVS on a plane. Compelled to post my creepy incident after reading things on here for the past few days. This happened a while ago, when I was 12, and I was and still am a pretty tiny girl, no bigger than 5 feet and 100 pounds at the time. I was super shy, non-confrontational, and just generally a timid person, and not used to speaking out against people. I was on a very long flight, coming home after visiting my dad. I was with my mom and 2 brothers and sister. The airline couldn't give us seats together for some reason, so my older brother and sister were sitting somewhere else, while we had the middle column, which had 4 seats. From left to right, the row went like empty seat, me, my mom, and my 7-year-old brother. Soon after we settled, a very large man came and took the empty seat beside me. He immediately realized he was too big to fit into his seat alone and pushed up the armrest separating him and me, pulled over into my seat. I was subsequently squished into my mom's side and was twisted into 1/3 of my seat at this point. Now this guy was insanely big, like he wasn't your average fat or merely just overweight guy, he was obese. He could have killed me if he stepped on me. He tried talking to me a couple times, but it just came off gross or stupid. He asked if I took his blanket or something. When he realized he was just sitting on it, he drooled in his sleep and asked me if I knew where that wet spot on him came from. It didn't take long for me to be grossed out by this, so I just resolved to not interact with him for the rest of the flight. I watched movies or read my books, what have you, but every time he tried to find some way to touch me or ask me something, I figured I should just sleep, because looking busy didn't stop him from bothering me. I slept on and off for a few hours, and when I wake up, I just watch a movie and fall back asleep a little while later. At one point, I was extremely tired, so I was just about to fall asleep. I was at the stage when you're on the brink of just sleeping, when the differences between reality and dreams are indistinguishable, when sounds and feelings from your surroundings make their way into a seemingly normal scenario in your dreams. At this point, I felt something brush past my thigh. I dreamed I was walking through some thriving Amazonian forest and walked past some low-hanging leaf that touched my leg, so I didn't think much of it, until I felt it again, slower and more deliberate. My mind couldn't think of something to explain that, so my dream was gone. Then I felt a squeeze on my thigh. I scrunched up my face at that. I knew that felt wrong. I never felt that before in any setting. I was still exhausted for some reason though, so I didn't open my eyes, but instead just stirred a bit and moved, hoping it stopped there. It didn't. I felt a hand go up my arm and squeeze my arm, then my shoulder. I kept thinking if I pretended to sleep, it would go away, it would stop. It didn't. I felt his grubby hand go up and down my left arm once more before it slipped into my jacket and squeezed my breast. I was astonished. I couldn't move. I mumbled a very groggy no, and I shut my eyes closed tighter and prayed I was imagining this. My vocalization made him more confident, and he put his arm around me, trying to pull me closer while rubbing my leg with the other. He started whispering things like, "Hey baby, how old are you? You're so sexy. You're the sexiest girl I've ever seen. What's your name? My name's AJ." Through the whispering, I kept repeating in a very scared voice, No, I don't want to. Please stop." And he kept repeating, "I'm not gonna hurt you. I just think you're really great. Look, I really like you." I didn't know what else to do, so I shook my mom and I told her what was happening. She, a very small, fragile Indian woman, saw his hands trying to pull me to him and shoved them off and asked what the problem was. He responded with, "I was just trying to help her, see? She was sleeping like completely on you, and I thought she'd hurt her neck, so I suggested she sleep on my shoulder." My mom goes, "That's alright. She's fine. You don't need to worry about her." "No, really, I think she could seriously hurt her neck. She should really sleep on me," he says, grabbing my left arm with some force. This went on for a while until I pulled my arm free from his grip and my mom had her arms around me. "Don't worry about her, and don't touch her again," my mom told him with a final say, to which he replied with hands raised, "I was just trying to help." And that was it. He never spoke to me again for the duration of the plane ride, which, as it happens, was another 8 hours. As it turns out, he lives in the same city as me, but I haven't seen him since. But after that, I've had many dreams about stabbing him if I was ever to see him again. Thinking back, I guess we should have called the flight attendants and reported him or something, but it never occurred to either of us at the time. I've since gotten over it, but it was still a traumatizing experience. I remember it all too well, even 8 years later.